know how sometimes you get a phrase or a line of writing or something implanted in your head and it sticks there? This morning I got one stuck in my head, and it's a lyric from Merrily We Roll Along, and it's, "I don't perform except at dinner." Well, you're having dinner, and I guess it's my time to perform. So I get to start because I get to start with just one of those things. Now, just one of those things. Music and lyrics by Cole Porter, first performed in the smash hit 1935 musical Jubilee by June Knight and Charles Walters. The other big hit tune from Jubilee is Begin the Begin. Now, I knew all that, but I looked it up to make sure, because that's what copy editors do. Never trust your own memory. So it's a great song, as you know, and it discusses any number of important things, including crazy flings and gossamer wings. And it also talks about one of those bells that now and then rings, just one of those things. And that's where, copy editorially, I have to step in, and with great respect to the absolutely generally impeccable Mr. Porter, who's from Indiana. Did you know that? Yeah. That's a little fun fact. Cole Porter is from Indiana. So here's the thing, and I cleared with the management that I'm allowed to actually read this, because when I'm quoting somebody else, when I'm quoting me, I can do whatever I want, but when I'm quoting somebody else, and I'm quoting from a book that was my grammatical stylistic Bible throughout my career, wonderful book, long since out of print, called Words into Type. And this is what Words into Type has to say. The verb in a relative clause agrees with the antecedent of the relative pronoun, which is the nearest noun or pronoun, and is often the object of a preposition, as in the phrase, one of those who, or one of the things that. So to put that into more or less standard English, it should properly be one of those bells that now and then ring, just one of those, and then we have a problem. Now, on at least two of her recordings, the excellent Lena Horne sings the lyric grammatically correctly and thus wrecks the rhyme. And I really have to admire that kind of commitment. But so the thing about that bit of grammatical doggerel I just recited to you is, if a rule is so arcane and so abstruse that almost nobody knows it, and people who are told about it have a tendency to sort of wrinkle their nose at you or violently disagree with you, is that a rule that's worth preserving? And that's, of course, the great question of how English works. And I, of course, will mount my high horse and say, sure, yeah. The more abstruse and arcane, those are two of my middle names, abstruse and arcane. So we want to preserve that, and so that's what my life has been these last 3 decades or so. But the thing is, I was sort of destined for this life from the very beginning. When I was a very young person, I had a book, and it was one of those sort of oversized books. Of course, I was a small person, so all books were, oversized, and it had one of those, hard covers that you could wipe down in case you spilled something on it. And it was a book about people we would now call the indigenous peoples of America, or Native Americans, or First Americans. But this was a book I had, when I was 6 in the early 1960s. So it was a book about American Indians. And one of the things that I remembered most about that book, and something that I carried with me over the years, over and over again, was always in my head. There was the story of how when Navajo women weave rugs, they intentionally put an error into every rug that they make. And I also carried with me in my head the illustration that sat right next to that description of a woman sort of facing away from us with her rug, and then sitting next to her, as I recall, there was a little child sort of sitting in the scrub grass. And this made a great impression on me, but being young and sort of literal-minded, what I took away from the story was not the notion that perfection is achievable only by the gods, or warnings about human hubris. What I took away from this story was perfection is achievable. And that's a really bad thing to get stuck in your head when you're 6 or 7 years old. And over the years, you know, it's like, when you go professionally into the error-seeking out business, other people's errors are interesting and fixable. Your own, of course, are going to be intolerable. And you may or may not ever make your, may or may not ever sort of, you know, make your peace with that. And when you're living in a world that is all about attempting to achieve perfection, everywhere you look, there are going to be mistakes. Do you remember the movie My Week with Marilyn? And how charming Michelle Williams was as Marilyn Monroe and Eddie Redmayne? What I remember from My Week with Marilyn was that there was a prescription bottle sitting on a night table, and you saw it for maybe a second and a half, and the drug was misspelled. That's what I saw. As my husband has been known to say, it must be really painful to be in your head sometimes. Or as Dante would say, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Of course, he said it in Italian. But you know, you do your best with what you have. So this is how I made my living, and this is how I made a good living, in the service of books, in the service of authors' words, which is a really wonderful way to make a living, I just have to say. So here's the thing. Maybe a year and a half ago, I got it into my head that I wanted to see if I could find that book. And even though I couldn't remember what the title of the book was, one thing that copy editors are pretty good at is looking things up and finding things. And I found it. I found a copy of it, and I ordered a copy of it. Do we have the book? And we found the book. And the particular thing that I remember is that the gentleman in the lower left-hand corner, that's Pontiac. I always thought, even when I was 6, he looks like my grandfather. Not with the hat, but that's the picture. And it's just the way I remembered it. And I have learned over the years that perfection is not achievable, and the thing is, I've made my peace with that. Mostly. And another thing, again, it's like if I'm going to quote somebody, I want to quote them correctly. So, you know, it's like there's the Japanese aesthetic that's called kintsugi, which is the appreciation of things that are in fact broken. And it makes me think of the wonderful Leonard Cohen lyric, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And I find that it is a wonderful thing to live in a world that eludes perfection. I find that most of the time. Thank you.